first of all, just let me, say that I hope you and those on the phone and your families are staying safe and healthy in this pandemic time. Certainly for us and in the world of athletics, it has stopped things, but I think it's also put into perspective sort of where athletics fits in the priorities of life. And it's been a challenging time, I think, to coach when what you love to do is get on the field with your athletes and make them better. But I think we're all at a time where we've got to look at things and see what we can do to maintain the health and safety of our student athletes and maintain the safe and healthy of our community. And so following those guidelines and doing those things and encouraging those people around you, I think, is what we're doing now. We've been staying in touch with our team. I think we're in a little bit of a fortunate situation. I feel deeply for my colleagues who are spring sport coaches and spring sport athletes who certainly have their seasons ended abruptly. As a fall sport, things are in a little bit different situation for us. And, what we've tried to do is maintain the momentum that we had in the spring. We were preparing for the fall already. That was the path that we were on, and we were talking about getting better every day. And we were doing that in a technical, tactical, psychological, and as well as what I would call a cultural way. And so we're trying to continue to do that with Zoom meetings, as I'm sure a lot of people are, encouraging the players to communicate with each other, to challenge each other, and to stay as connected as possible. So, our strength and conditioning coach certainly has put out activities, and I think when you talk with a team, they're being creative in ways that they can continue to develop, like I said, both as athletes and as students in the careers that they're following, as a team in terms of coming closer together, and just as in people and learning how to handle adversity. And I think this situation has given us an opportunity to do all of that.
Hey, Janet, it's Scott Ritchie from the News Gazette. I was curious, did you get through all of your spring, workouts and maybe your spring schedule, or where were you at in that regard?
Yeah, so really the only competition, quote-unquote competition we had was our annual 77 tournament, where we compete in small-sided environments. So our spring games, we're allowed to play on 5 dates. So we used one of those dates. We kind of saved the other 4 to be able to play outdoors when the weather gets nicer. So our first one was, the Saturday following spring break. So, we certainly missed out on our spring competitions, but I think that's relative to missing out on a competitive season and a championship. It's a much better situation, I guess, for us to be in as a fall sport.
Suppose we have a follow up to that. During the summer, the players kind of go their own way, and you don't have a lot of contact with them, coaching wise. Just has that given you maybe some insight on how you can forge forward, given the separation happened a little earlier than usual?
Absolutely. I told someone the other day, I think that, certainly this is going to, it has created some challenges, but I think it's also created some opportunities for us to learn how to do things in a new way. And, we're one of those sports who isn't allowed to work with their athletes in the summer, so, not like basketball or some of the other sports where they can have their athletes on campus in the summer and can work with them. And so, we've always, developed in our athletes the kind of internal responsibility to take care of certain things on their own. And so I think this is a time that they get to really use that skill. But I think because it's an extended time, we're finding new ways to get connected to our athletes. I think we're all becoming Zoom or whatever other video platform you use. We're all becoming experts in using that to stay connected. And technology has allowed us to do so many things, and be able to teach and all of those things. So, I think it will make our ability to prepare our athletes maybe even that much better when we look at all the different ways that we can utilize in order to do that when they're away from us in the summertime going forward.
And I asked Sue this yesterday, but I don't know that I had heard of Zoom until last month. I mean, Had you used that before, and how have you found maybe holding team meetings via video conference?
Sure. I think I had heard of Zoom. I had heard of video conferencing. Certainly had some, Skype calls, with multiple people and some things like that. But I think, and, not just Zoom, there's, some collaboration tools and the ability to share screen and, the video conferencing, I think, like I said, I think we're all becoming experts in it. We did our first, what I would call tactical, uh, video education session just a couple of days ago when you're sharing screen and watching video together. And I think the real challenge is, and this is something I think this generation is more used to maybe than we are. It's really hard to sort of read it's a difference between a text message and a conversation. There can be a lot of facial cues that you don't pick up and things like that. It's hard to figure out who's about to speak. And I think we're all getting better at that, able to kind of navigate um, the conference when it's not in person. But I think we're also learning, like in those tactical sessions, we split our team in half. It's hard to have 24 people on and have a conversation, but 10 or 11 watching a video and having a conversation, that seemed to be much more effective. And so, certainly continue to use that moving forward. And um, it's a learning situation. I was listening to a podcast the other day and talking about the terrible first time. You always feel a little bit inadequate when doing something for the first time, and I think that's how most of us are in terms of trying to become. It's not a video conference; it's a video coaching session, and those are a little bit more difficult than I think even I anticipated. But it's fun to learn something new. I think the athletes are getting a different experience from it, and I think we'll all learn from that.
I suppose from a soccer standpoint, where did you maybe feel like the team was as it was getting into its spring, especially coming off of last fall?
Yeah, I think we were in a really good place, and that's why I say we really want to try to keep the momentum going. I think we were starting to really figure out who we were as a team. I think you always know where you are as a program. There's certain values and standards that sort of start from the top, from Josh to me to our program. You know who you are as an athletic department. You know who you are as a program. But I think each team has to develop their own identity and decide who they are and what they're going to stand for, so to speak, as a team, not just as a program. And so I think we were really getting to a point where we felt good about that, and leaders were starting to emerge. So we want to continue to do that. We were doing what we call Meet and Compete Fridays, where we would meet for an hour with the intent of resolving those things, working on our culture, deciding who we were, making decisions about that collectively, and then we would go out and compete, without necessarily instruction, and really start to get that competitiveness going. So, we're trying to continue that and maintain that momentum. I think a lot of our younger players are juniors like Maggie that you'll hear from later, and our rising juniors, the sophomore class. I think we're really starting to take ownership of the team and the direction they wanted it to go, and talk about some of the things that maybe didn't happen in the fall that we wanted to happen. From really starting the season off well and not being able to sustain that through kind of some of the ups and downs of the Big Ten season, and how we can be better and be more resilient. And I think we were really starting to make progress in those areas. And the goal for us as a staff now is to not let this pandemic interrupt that progress. And so, we've talked about that, and we've talked about, if we do play in the fall, the team in the program that handled this interruption, that handled this adversity the best, is really going to have a leg up on the rest of their competition. And so, we're really focused on handling this in the way that defines us as being resilient, as being competitive, as being creative. And so, we're trying to use this as a way to continue that process as opposed to interrupt it.
This is, I guess, a little maybe off subject, but just with your familiarity with the national team, how is postponing the Olympics maybe going to affect, especially the women's team that was made poised off of the World Cup? with a roster that was maybe only going to be together, maybe just with some key players for just through 2020. I'm just curious, kind of your take on what that might look like in 2021 instead.
Right. I think it has a different impact probably on players differently. Great example is it's probably a huge benefit for someone like Alex Morgan, who was going to try to come back after giving birth to a child. It gives her more time for that process to happen. It's probably difficult, or adds to the difficulty for someone like Carly Lloyd, who was is getting older and certainly was, I would say, trying to make it through this Olympics. So if you look at what it does to individual players, I think it really is different depending on the situation that they were in. I think collectively as a team, it certainly gives Latko Andonovski, the new coach, a little bit more time to probably evaluate, put his team together, have training times, assuming that they can start training at a relative distance from the rescheduled time. But that also presents challenges. Are there going to be new players that emerge, and what does that do to the dynamics of the team? I think it's greatly impacted the lawsuit and the things that are going on with the federation, because that was the momentum there was pretty strong, and things were happening, and you had the head of the president resign, and Cindy Parlow Cohen take over. So lots of things were happening, and so I think it's been a disruption that has both pluses and minuses for where the national team is and for where it's going. But again, I think our national team has been resilient, and I think they'll attack the Olympics whenever it is. I think the good thing is they're going to have a chance to do what no team has done, and that's put a World Cup gold medal and Olympics back to back. I think they're very excited that it was postponed and not canceled, because the inability to maybe do that and not have another opportunity at that for 4 more years, I think would have been really disheartening. But with it being postponed, they at least have the opportunity to still try to put those things back to back.